कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय श्रीगोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ असतो मां सद्गमय तमसो मां ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवां भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्जयजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवाग्मुषस्तनूभिर्व्यशेमहि देवहितं जदायुः। ॐ श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारी हे नाथ नारायण वासुदेव। ॐ अनादिनिधनो देवं शङ्खचक्रगदाधर अक्षय पुण्डरीकाक्ष आत्मा मोक्षप्रदो भव। I would like to thanks to the organizers of the SAICA who has given me an opportunity to pray for the divine soul who is with not us, a spiritual leader who has sacrificed his life, who has done a tremendous work, seva karya, bhakti karya, and manav dharma. And I pay my tribute and prayers to the God that Bhagavan Sri Krishna give eternal peace to his divine soul. Honorable late Desmond Tutu, who is the Nobel Prize winner and who has visited India twice with same joy, enthusiasm and divinity. One thing we all should learn is smile on a face. Up to now I haven't seen him on his any appearance where he did not smile. Smile can take many pain away from us, and this is one of the things we have learned from him. So I will hand over to the SAICA president who will lead us through this program. So now our SAICA president, Dr. Amitabh Mitra, will lead us to the next program. Jai Shri Krishna. Once again, thank you to SAICA organizers who has given me opportunity to pay my tribute.
Good evening, viewers. As our Honorable Priest Guru Gopalji Vyas has mentioned, that the Archbishop was never seen in anger, and that was the characteristic of the great priest, which he carried along throughout his life. We lost this icon on the 27th of December, and it was a loss not only for me, because somehow I felt very close to him, primarily because he came to India twice, and each time he came, he was given a presidential welcome. A presidential guard of honor was organized for him. The then reigning president of the country went up till his airplane to welcome him, in spite of him not holding any political position. And he lived in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, that is the presidential palace, as a guest of honor before his eventual uh, travel to Dharamsala, where actually he came to meet his very close friend, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He actually visited India twice, once before apartheid and once after apartheid. In 1980, his passport was seized for a short while, but then it was given back to him. I welcome all the guests. I would like to introduce to you my friend Mohan Rao. He has a master's degree in business administration, and he is an IT technologist and an IT business uh, personnel for the whole country. He runs a chain of IT centers and business, and he develops softwares for different departments. I want to introduce, I think uh, many of you know him very well, the man on the street, I call him, and that is Honorable MEC Kolilen Katha. I call him man on the street because he is always with the common man. And my closeness with him only happened to be because of his realization and his efforts to make the common man come up and help in any way, as the bishop did, in any way as possible. I would like to introduce Comrade Anil Pillai. He is the MPL and he is also the chief whip in the portfolio committee of the health. I congratulate him as an Indian. He has represented the Indian community in the legislature, and he is doing the same thing what our MEC does. He helps the common man not only in the East London but all the way to Alice. That is his center. I welcome Mr. Anil Pillai as a guest, and each of you, I will be asking you some small questions, and I would like your answers or your encounters, whether it is in the mind or whether it is in the physical form, with the Archbishop, popularly known as the Arch, Desmond Tutu. And I would start with Mr. Mohan Bhai, who is a very well-read person, an intellectual person, and I would love to ask him about his belief in the Archbishop's endeavor within South Africa and outside. Mr. Mohan.
Thank you, Doctor Amitabh Mitra ji, and thank you to our priest uh, Pandit Gopal Bhai ji for the initial prayer and tribute, and very heartfelt thanks to our two esteemed guests, the Honorable MEC and the distinguished MPL, for both of you being here. I think my sharing a few thoughts was completely off the plan, but I think Dr. Mitra has got me onto this because we are one of the founding members of SAICA, that is the South African Indian Cultural Association, which we believe is a fusion organization for the South African Indians and the South African culture. And I have been the architect of the constitution of SAICA. But then it's an honor for us to be doing this virtual tribute to an icon, one of the icons of the century of a couple of generations, Sri Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Needless to mention that the two countries, South Africa as well as India, have such great contributions to the world's humanity in terms of the most basic philosophies. The South African philosophy of Ubuntu, which is loosely translated, it can mean I am because we are, and essentially it's humanity. And the Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is that the world is one family. And these two, and the people with their the very founding philosophies that shapes the lives and thinking of nations and peoples and societies. So this bonding and this fusion between South African culture and Indian culture is actually most natural, because it has got the maximum that it can contribute to humanity, especially to a humanity that's today beleaguered on so many fronts. And in that context, the one icon who actually lived it and showed it to us is the Archbishop himself. And to that extent, we are going to deeply feel his loss. But today, we shall celebrate his life and his achievements, his teachings, his examples, so that we as people of two nations who have joined hands on many counts in the past, in the present, and will do so in the future, to be able to probably show a guiding light to humanity in its hours of crisis, where we have actually some very distinguished speakers who will actually share with us their thoughts. I will leave it to them there, and without taking much more time. And I'll thank you once again for giving me a few minutes to listen. And thank you very much. But then the floor is back to you, Dr. Mitra, so that we can have our distinguished guests actually regale us with their contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohan Bhai. You mentioned about the sharing of the cultures, but strangely, during my period from 1992 onwards, even before the liberation, I found a sharing of the language also, and in isiXhosa we say kulula, means open, and in Hindi language we also say kolo, means open. So I was quite surprised that these two lines are the same. So we have a sharing of the language too. Meanwhile, I would like to invite Comrade Nkatha, MEC of Kokta. Comrade, you had been, before you embarked on your political career, you had been a person who worked very hard. You worked for your, actually, in various fields, in the mining sector, in the bakery sector, and finally you entered politics. But during that period of your time, which was a very hard time, and it was a volatile time, and it was a time of the pre-apartheid era, how would you find the Archbishop's struggle? A single priest from the pulpit fighting against a single priest from the pulpit fighting against the mighty apartheid. How would you find that, because personally, he did a Gandhian struggle, and he always fought against violence. But when I look into it, I found that Gandhi also belonged to a political organization, but he was not a part of any political organization. And when you were actually uh, not in the politics, but you were still struggling and fighting against apartheid in your own small ways, how would you find the bishop's struggle during those days?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mitra, my comrades, whom I refer to him as the people's doctor, simply because he's one of the few doctors, long before we were free, who was able to work in a township hospital serving the disadvantaged, able to provide support, which he still do, to black professional boxers. And I've since been referring to him as a people's doctor. And it's quite humbling, the introduction and good words that are encouraging, referring to us as a common man serving common people. And greetings to you, and greetings to Honorable Pillay, greetings to the Honorable Priests and other distinguished guests and academics that are here. I think the introduction has sort of covered some of the areas I thought that would be the introduction to underline our common, history, as a people, both South African and the Indian people, and the common history involving Gandhi and his influence in the struggle, the non-violent struggle that we pursued before the ANC decided to embark on the armed struggle. It was Gandhi who influenced, the struggles, the Adipas, campaigns, and all those struggles. And it is quite understandable that we feel a common sense of loss between the Indian community and South Africans because of the shared history that we have, and because of our common commitment to justice and to equality. And we're paying tribute today to a great man, and who has done an immeasurable contribution to humanity. And as we do that today, in our country, we're marking the 27th anniversary. I'm from Soweto now, from Avalon Cemetery, where we're marking the anniversary of the passing of Joe Slovo. Joe Slovo was the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, and Joe Slovo, whilst I'm remembering, I'm citing Joe Slovo whilst remembering, Archbishop Tutu, is because he once remarked that there are two people that you can trust. That's Joe Slovo saying. He's saying that there are two people that you can trust. It is a good Christian and a good communist. And I would imagine that he was referring to Christians only in the Southern context. I would imagine that a good Hindu, a good Islam, and a good communist, are the two people that you can find in our context. And it reminds me of the simplicity of the two men. Joe Slovo's coffin was not expensive. It was just a pine, very, very cheap, coffin. And he went buried to a working class graveyard, if you want to put it that way, in Avalon Cemetery in Soweto, not in Sandton, not anywhere else here in the country. And the Archbishop said that he does not want a casket, he just wants a simple coffin. So that's how simply that the Archbishop was. Here is a leader in the midst when our leaders were in prison, in the midst when our leaders were in exile, in the midst when organizations were banned. Here is an Archbishop, a leader of the church, who hold the fort and led all of us in the country to keep the fires burning. here is a leader who gave a meaningful interpretation of what God means to an oppressed people. He taught us that because the apartheid state, was a Christian state, and therefore the fact that blacks were oppressed, were inferior, were always taught that it was because of God's will that the majority is oppressed. But here is Archbishop Tutu, through his liberation theology, he thought that in fact God is the God of the oppressed, and God wants us to be free. He empowered us, he helped us mobilize to appreciate that we are human too, and that it's quite fitting that we get the freedom that we want. We owe it to him, the kind of an example that he has set for the country. With his passing, we are poorer. As we embark into a renewal path now, we are in this renewal. We just yesterday, the Acting Chief Justice Zondo tabled the state capture report. One of the things that the Archbishop passed on, complaining about, was the conduct of some of us and the mistakes that we have done as a government and we have done as the ruling party. The only fitting tribute that we're committing to do is to correct all the things that the Arch has raised. And what we need to do is to ensure that the recommendations and the findings of the Zondo Commission are implemented to the letter. All those who have stolen billions of money meant for the workers and the poor, whom Archbishop Tutu led in order for them to be free, we must ensure that those people are held accountable. I'm really privileged to be part of this, quite an august, seminar to pay tribute to this giant. Indeed, our country is poorer without him, but at least there is an example that we must follow, and it is up to us now to make a contribution that will give him a fitting tribute, so that the majority of our people become better, and are free from poverty and unemployment. That's the experience I can briefly share, to say that in a country where we're told that to be black, in fact, it is God that has made us to be poor, and the whites are superior, blacks are inferior, and they would quote the Bible and all that, but the Arch led us to say, no, that is not true. God is God of the poor, and God has created us to be free, and that we must fight for freedom. And that's what motivated us. And we thank him for his contribution, and thanks for all of you for the views that you have shared with us. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Holile. We got a real insight into the people's struggle. I also would like to thank just a comment from Zena John from Johannesburg, who thanked us in her own way. I would like to invite the member of the legislature, Mr. Anil Kumar, Comrade Anil Kumar Pillai, who has been in the forefront of struggle, and he had told me many a times that how difficult it is to work in the rural sector, and how difficult it is to reach the goal which he had achieved. Before I give the mic to Anil Kumarji, I would like to also say that in the year 1975, the African National Congress was recognized as a representative political organization in India, and Comrade Muzi Mula from Johannesburg, he was made the chief representative of the African National Congress in Delhi. So, at his place in the Bhagat Singh Market in New Delhi, in his 2-room apartment, which was both his home as well as the office of the ANC, we started the struggle, and with the assistance of the government of India. Our mutual collaboration goes back to 1976 and till the time when the liberation of the country and the actual representative status of ANC in India, as well as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was converted into an ambassador status. And today we have a beautiful palatial building which happens to be the Embassy of South Africa in India. If anybody visits, you would be able to be very happy to see that 2-bedroom apartment at Bhagat Singh Market, from where we started, has been converted into a huge, beautiful building. Our representative comrade Mozi Mullah still lives in Johannesburg, and if any one of you is keen to visit him, he would welcome you with open arms to his humble house. He and his son, they live there, and we think about the good old days when we marched on the streets of Delhi holding flags of ANC and asking for the freedom of Nelson Mandela. But over to you, Anil Bhai, and I would like you to tell us about your struggle and how do you feel about the passing away of the Arch. Does it have any meaning to your empowerment and to the struggle which you are involved in to make it a better South Africa?
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. I think before I respond to the question, let me also greet in this nice evening Panditji Sri Gopal Vas, Sri Mohanji, and also you said the MEC is a friend of a common man and he represents the common man. That to me, with my political association with him, my social association with him over the 30 years, I fully categorically agree with you what you are saying. He has been my mentor in my political life, and this is not mine. We are talking about Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop. And I want to say that whatever you ask, whatever you ascribe to him today is true, and I fully agree with that. Let me get into today's particular session, where we are talking about a person. Much has been talked about, much has been read about, much has been circulated about Archbishop Desmond Tutu. But the point is, not only that he was a person who amplified the wisdom to people. To me, on a personal note, what my political life, when I look back into his life, is actually streaming ahead of any other factor is how he managed 2 important areas of operation. It's not an easy thing. Most of the time we always say in our speeches, in our writings, that religion should come and assist politics. Politics should be complementing religion. But it's not an easy process. But in South Africa, what the Archbishop demonstrated is truly how the values of the religion can be utilized to a country which has been under ravage because of color, because of racism, and because of other issues. So I want to say that when I was a student, we used to hear stories of Benjamin Molasses, many other poets, political leadership, Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, all this. Equally, somebody coming from a religious sector, from a different social system, to come into a play and change the political course of this country. In fact, to come and play into a role to liberate this nation from the atrocities of a regime has been very good. Now, as I indicated that I'm not going to say about the past, I want to look at 2020, a new coronavirus came into picture. We have been forgetting about inequality. We have been not talking about how the world order has been changed. But once again, this COVID-19 reminded us that this world is a global village. We cannot go sometimes into mere narrow nationalism. It needs to be having an international thinking. And that's exactly what the bishop was talking to us. He became a man of the world because his teachings and his involvement in South African politics showed us that we cannot be alone. Dr. Mitra, when you are articulating about what has been happening about Comrade staying in Johannesburg, how the relationship between these two countries are very big in many ways, and I'm not going to get into that. It is important that nations become closer. It is important that people across the world become closer. And that is one of the things I always give credit to Desmond Tutu. He managed to do that. The second one, because of time frames, I'm not going to detail into that, but I want to say that when he went to abroad, a question was asked to him. That the question was, you represent a specific entity. You represent a specific view of Christianity. How are you managing these opposite belief systems? That was the question asked to him. And he said, he does not believe in opposing belief system. He believes that the goodwill of the God must be used in light of everyone, irrespective of the religion, creed, or caste. So what I want to try to say that's why even today, SAICA, one of the proud organizations of this country, is organizing this from a different perspective, from a different dimension. Yet we are all coming together to celebrate the life of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So what I'm saying that he actually showed us that belief systems are there for the betterment of the people. And lastly, in 2013, when he criticized Cuba on a particular issue, we never liked it. But we were happy to express the point that Desmond Tutu never worried, or he never been afraid to say what is in his mind. So what I want to say that these three aspects of Archbishop is indicating to us how a leader and how a leader can change. A question you asked, Dr. Mitra, that I know the time is going, but I just want to answer that question. That truly, when you go through the political leadership and how their lives has been, it's actually giving more energy and strength to deal with the rural life. Because this COVID has again proved us that South Africa lives in the rural areas. India lives in the rural areas. If you forget the rural areas and the people of the rural area, there is no heart, there is no soul. So it is important, and once you move with them, once you agree with them, once you move with them, you will understand the satisfaction you get from them. And I always enjoy about it. So by closing, I want to say that this small session, it is really amplifying our own echoing and thinking of how these wonderful people change the lives of the people. And certainly, this has to pass from generation to generation, and that is what we are trying. Once again, thank you for this opportunity to respond to this particular question. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Anil Pillai. Thank you so much. By mentioning the rural values of every individual, even an urbanite has a rural roots somewhere, sometimes in his life. So one must not forget the rural values of every human being. And Anil Bhai, while working in the rural sector, has actually experienced it in the first hand of how the rural people can be uplifted by social and by way of social upliftment as well as by political uh, intervention. Now, I think my next guest is a somewhat of a, I always consider her as a leader, but a leader of different sorts. And that is Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, who is the founder director of Masi Manane, the NGO, which deals with everything and anything regarding the feminine sector uh, relating to sexual assault and sexual violence. Thank you, Leslie Ann. Before I give you the mic, I would like to tell us, I'd like you to tell us about the Archbishop's views on the homophobic nature of South Africans and in the international scale, as well as his value of human rights. I have been quite involved with Masimanane because I deal with on a daily scale with sexual assaults. But I would like to share with you a small entertaining video which I had seen, and I would like to just narrate with about death and how these two friends, that is the elder friend is the Bishop Tutu, and the younger friend is the Dalai Lama. And somebody was asking them about death. And the arch just smiled and said that, well, that death is nothing. It is just going from one room to the other room and closing the door. And then he looked up towards the Dalai Lama. He says that this guy, this man, this mischievous guy, this naughty chap can never die because he's a Buddhist and he's always reincarnating, so he can never die. So the Dalai Lama smiled and says that the arch is also a monk. Look at his head, and his head looks like that of a monk. So when he passes away, he will not go to the next room. I'm sure he will also reincarnate. And there was a big laughter between them. It was, I think, a relationship of not as friends, but as brothers. You know, the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop, they treated and they laughed at each other's jokes like a elder brother to a younger brother. And the Dalai Lama believes that this loss cannot be fulfilled. I would like to welcome Leslie Ann Foster and her work in gender violence in the Eastern Cape and around the world. She travels around the world. She goes to United Nations. She talks on gender violence and the relationship with the Desmond Tutu, who also shared the same views as you have, I have. And what do you think about those views in the contemporary South Africa?
Good evening, Dr. Mitra, and good evening to everybody who is participating here. I'm profoundly humbled by the honor accorded to me by the South African Indian Cultural Association for allowing me to speak at this memorial of the Archbishop. What I want to start off by echoing everyone else is that the Archbishop Desmond Tutu had a most extraordinary life. He was a man who was devoted to God and all God's people. And that earned him the highest recognition and respect in the world when he was given the Nobel Peace Prize for his contribution to social justice, to equality, and to peace in particular. The Archbishop embodied the essence of what all of us should be, which is a good person who stands for all oppressed people and who will employ peaceful means to bring about justice and peace. I like the anecdote you shared now from the Book of Joy, which I think is so appropriate because he was such a fun-loving person. And amidst the difficult work that he did, he was always able to find humor and to bring people down to really the essence of who we are, which is good people and people that should be experiencing joy. As Masimanyane Women's Rights International, we salute our Arch. He liked to be called our Arch, and I like that as well. He had a T-shirt which said Arch. And I want to salute him for being a courageous, ethical, fearless, and resolute advocate for the liberation of our people and all oppressed people across the world, and the Palestinians come to mind particularly. His profound nonviolent stance against the apartheid regime, because it was so profound, because it was so deeply principled and consistent. His criticism of our current government was steeped in the same values and principles which he articulated with the same fearlessness that he did apartheid. He never stood down from a challenge, and he was always clear in his messaging about equality and social justice. As Masimanyane, we had the privilege of meeting the Arch at the start of our organization 25 years ago. And he supported our very first political act when we didn't even know what we were doing was a political act, which was to sign a petition which we sponsored as Masimanyane, asking for the state to address gender-based violence in a comprehensive and holistic way. And that endorsement of this political act gave us such inspiration and energy to continue the struggle, which we are now celebrating in our 25th year. We were deeply moved and inspired by his statement, the statement of the Arch, that has been a great deal of injustice done to women. His statement is that a great deal of injustice has been done to women, that more than 50% of the world's population is marginalized and oppressed. And his recognition was important to the work. It gave us the impetus to continue the struggle for equality and justice for women and girl children. He said in his very simple way, it's stupid to sideline 50% of the world's populations. It doesn't make any sense at all. He never beat about the bush. His message was simple and clear. He said that if we are going to see real development in the world, our best investment is in women. And up until today, that wisdom has not seeped through into the psyche of all the people in our country and in other countries across the world where inequality prevails. The women of South Africa, and Masimanyane in particular, and women across the world will forever be grateful to Archbishop Tutu for his profound recognition and acknowledgement of the injustice, the inequality, and the violence that women and girls face, especially as victims of gender-based violence. I also want to acknowledge his commitment to the plight of the Palestinians and the plight of LGBTQI communities. He was so strong on the issue of equality that he could not see any way in which he, in his work and the communities of the world, should oppress people from these marginalized groups. As social justice and human rights advocates, we were encouraged when he declared, "I'm absolutely, utterly, and completely certain that God wouldn't be homophobic. I'd much rather go to hell than go to a homophobic heaven." I think that's one of the most profound statements from a world leader, because our Arch was a world leader. And that has really given the work of human rights advocates huge inspiration to continue to fighting for equality. I'll end off my little input with a quote which fills all of us in the human rights field with hope in these very trying times, as we see the backlash against human rights, as we see human rights being eroded, and as we see the struggle getting stronger and getting more necessary and critical in these times. He said there is a moral obligation, which means that despite all of the evidence that seems to be to the contrary, there is no way that evil and injustice and oppression and lies can have the last word in our world. That is what has upheld the morale of people, to know that in the end good will prevail. And as human rights advocates, we all know in our different spheres, we are advocating for the rights of the most oppressed, the marginalized, the invisibilized communities in our society. That this is what we need to know, is that yes, there are lies, there's corruption, there's evil in the world. If you look at the levels of violence, you look at the inequality, the economic oppression of people, but it will not have the last word. This is what the Arch is saying, that good will prevail. And I think that, in essence, is one of his most profound legacies. So in closing, I'd like to say that we pray that our beloved Archbishop Tutu may rest in eternal peace, and may the legacy he leaves continue to guide and inspire us in our continued struggle for equality and justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie, for this wonderful oration and talking about the marginalized community, the invisible community, and that is what the Archbishop truly stood for till the end of his life. And I really thank you for bringing forth this.
He dies and he goes to heaven, where he thinks he should be going. But when he gets there, St. Peter says, "No, you don't belong here. You've got to go to the other place." So I go to the other place, the warmer place. And 2 weeks later, there is frenzied knocking on the doors of heaven. And St. Peter goes and he opens, and there's the devil standing on the doorstep. And Peter says, "No, Tuyo, what are you doing here?" And the devil says, you sent Bishop Tutu down there. He's causing so much trouble. I've come to ask for political asylum.
As we all could understand from the video, that although our beloved Arch is no longer with us, but he is somewhere where he is still continuing with his laughing, continuing with his walking and struggle for the people of the lower status and for the people who don't have the rights. In the end, just one line to all of us participants, if we can end, and I would like to ask Shri Mohanji once again to give us a one-line statement of how you feel about the passing away of our beloved Archbishop, and how would you remember him?
Thank you very much to all the speakers and Dr. Amitabh once again for giving me this opportunity. In one line, yes, the void is deeply felt, no doubt. But then we, in true spirit of what he wanted, we continue to celebrate the values he cherished, the values that we, the Indian people and the South African people, have inherited, the values of humanity that we have inherited from our ancestors as a heritage, which I promise you is so valuable that that will be the path breaking way for the world tomorrow, the values of humanity. And that's what we live for, and we are proud that we were contemporaries of such great people. We would have read about these people in the history books, but to be a contemporary in as a receiver of that wisdom from those people is what we are blessed and fortunate for. Thank you very much. With that, I thank everybody once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you,
Namaskar.
Mohan Bhai. Thank you. I go forward to Comrade Kolile. Is he there? Comrade Kolile, yes. Comrade Kolile, please, a last line from you. You have been so close to a social injustice system. I have been in the field of health, but you have been much closer, and the gap between have-nots and the haves have grown further and further after the liberation struggle. How would you think, by your social and political action, how would you think that the Archbishop's blessings would continue to help us in reducing this gap?
Yeah, thanks again, Dr. Mitra, and all the panelists and the honorable priest. I really, as I said, that I am honored to participate into this session, honoring the Arch, and it has deepened my resolve to continue with the struggle for justice. It has deepened my understanding that the struggle for social justice is a lifelong commitment. It's something that you should not be committed to it for 10 years or 20 years, but you should be committed for a lifetime. And the Archbishop has done exactly that. And that's why I'm saying that the only way we can pay tribute to his life is to continue with this journey of ensuring that our freedom has meaning to the majority, not to the elite, because he wanted the majority to be free. And his commitment to the children, his commitment to women's rights, his commitment, for gay, lesbian community and all those kind of people to be free. That's what I am committed to do going forward, and I'm really honored to have been part of this session. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kolile Nkatha. I go forward to a last concluding line from Anil Pillai, the Legislative Council member of the Eastern Cape, who is far more closer than any one of us to the rural and the people who have been let down by the previous regime, and how we can use the Archbishop's sermons to make sure that they get whatever little, I won't say everything, but whatever little they can get and whatever little we can do for them. How would you feel about that?
Thank you, Mitraji. Once again, I think while saluting the SAICA leadership for this wonderful function, I would like to say that these leaders of the caliber of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who were instrumental in the foundations of justice to be implemented in the land, and we were remarkably successful in eliminating a racial regime or the apartheid. But my question is, my school of thought today is, why are we unsuccessful in taking away that kind of a context? When a small virus come into play, why Africa is being put alone and put segregated? Why there is a travel ban? This question always will come back and penetrate to our minds. Are we successful? Are we learned from the atrocities created by this kind of anarchies? So I am sure that this kind of symposiums and seminars and these thoughts of Desmond Tutu will give us courage and encouragement to fight that kind of racialism still alive across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil Bhai, for that courage and that encouragement which you have mentioned. And I'm sure in your work in the rural sector and your closeness with the people in the rural areas, you would be doing them a great favor by assisting them whatever little way. I know there is no finance, but still whatever little way we can do for them, and you can always count on me. If I can help you, please do so. Thank you once again. I go on to Leslie Ann for the last line. How does she feel with the absence of the arch? And I must say that I was really extremely one of those very many lucky individuals who saw the apartheid flag coming down and the South African flag going up, and the many political turmoils which preceded as well as succeeded after that. And unfortunately, the homophobic environment which was there in the apartheid South Africa continues to be in the present circumstances. Leslie Ann has been working very hard. How successful have you been in keeping the ideals and the goals of the arch with your Masimana Negro?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mitra. The one thing I want to say on a personal level, I'm deeply saddened by the passing of the Arch, because for me, it's not just him as a person and as a leader in South Africa, but that we've lost an icon in the world, one of the few profound leaders that we have that could speak truth to power in the way that he did. He was fearless, and when I say that, he would stand up to anybody, any government, any state, any individual who was perpetrating any kind of injustice. And one of the things we see now is that we have spineless leaders to a large extent across the world, not just in South Africa, but leaders who will succumb to the economic, what would the word be, to the economic kind of carrot that is, waved in front of their eyes. And it's such a devastation to us when we put greed and profit above people. And the Arch was so vehemently against that. And I think that we have a long way to go to uphold his morality, his integrity, his honesty, his fearlessness. And I pray that we will continue to take that legacy of his and to live it, to embody it. What was important about his support of human rights of people is that he didn't make any kind of compromises, any kind of distinctions. For him, it was the human rights of every single person, their right to dignity, their right to respect. and he insisted that that be upheld in its entirety. And I just, I'm sad because I think we, and particularly in South Africa, have lost, Nelson Mandela. We've lost now the Arch. Many really profound ethical leaders, and we're lacking that kind of leader. As powerful as what the Arch was. For me, that leaves me really sad, and it leaves me worrying about how we are going to be continuing in this world. But I think that there are many of us who are continuing, as everybody on this platform is now, that struggle for justice and equality. It's going to be a lifelong struggle. It's going to be, there's no ways that the West will concede to a more equal society, and we have to continue to push back on that. So the Arch leaves us with a wonderful legacy, a wonderful way in which we are clear about how we should be moving forward. And I pray that, in his own words, we each of us do a little bit of good where we are, because those little bits of good, those droplets, come together and eventually will overwhelm the injustices and the inequality and the oppression that so many people, the majority of people across the world, suffer. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share in this platform. Thank you, Dr. Mitra and SAICA.
Thank you, Leslie. And I believe completely that the Arch did not represent any political organization, whether it is his own Christianity or any political organization like the African National Congress, but he represented every human being, whether it was in South Africa or whether it was outside. He represented them for being oppressed, for being social injustices being done to them by a bigger group, and he wanted them to come up, and he wanted them to live a better life. Thank you so much. I would like our Guruji, Sri Gopal Vyas, to speak a few words and tell us about how he feels with the passing away of our Arch, and how does he feel about it.
So thank you, Dr. Mitra and SAICA once again. Thank you, Dr. Mitra and SAICA once again to calling me, as I had said, okay, smile. So the small video which was played during that the show, that video tells how jolly the leadership, spiritual leadership, could be to motivate to the followers, devotees, and congregation itself. Because one thing I can tell you, the spiritual leadership, irrespective what they go through in the personal life or into the different life, when they come into the front of the congregations, front of the devotees, front of the followers, they have a power, they have a divinity to motivate so many lives, because everybody look forward how to get motivated. And this big icon, big personality, big leadership, they have to show that kind of the leadership. And this is what I can say we as a spiritual leader has learned from our beloved late Desmond Tutu. Once again, thank you to SAICA, Dr. Mitra, and the entire team, and all the guests and speakers to calling me and giving me an opportunity. On behalf of the East London Hindu Society and Hindu Mandir, we would like to send and pay our condolences to the family and the nation whole. Thank you, Dr. Mitra. And we can lead towards the closing of this event by saying a Shanti part, which is called the Om. Devho Shantirantarikshagham Shanti Prithvi Shantirapa Shantirokhadayah Shanti Vanaspatayah Shantirvishve Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvagam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shama Shanti Redhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dr. Mitra, hand over to you.
Thank you, Guruji. What Guruji chanted was that he said, "Peace be unto all of us. Peace be unto not only humans, but unto the trees, unto the animals, and everywhere, which belongs to also the late Desmond Tutu's family and everybody." And that was a Sanskrit slok which he participated. I would like to thank all of you for giving us your precious time and encouraging us into a debate, which I'm sure the late Desmond is also listening to this. And I believe that he is happy wherever he is. And he is jolly and smiling and laughing wherever he is. And I would like to leave you once again with a big smile on your face and a big laughter that yes, we are. Yes, we will be. And yes, we are going to be. Thank you very much.